Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We've begun a study of Matthew chapter 24, 15, and following. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let the one who reads understand, then let those who are in Judea flee. Now then, I introduced the subject of the abomination of desolation as a critical element of understanding the Great Tribulation. I am suggesting to you that the abomination of desolation had to be some heinous sin or sins committed by Israel that would bring about the desolation and the destruction of the temple. Now, by the way, all throughout the Old Testament, this motif of Israel committing abominations leading to her desolation is found. It's found, for instance, in Leviticus chapter 26. I would strongly suggest that you spend some time in Leviticus chapter 26 because it is kind of a roadmap for the history of Israel. Over and over again, the Lord says, if you sin, if you commit trespass against me, I will bring desolations on you. So here is sin leading to desolation. And once again, the term abomination of desolation literally means abomination that leads to or that causes the desolation. Now, it's very, very important to understand the framework, the time context of that abomination. You know why? Because the abomination leads directly to the Great Tribulation. Now, it's absolutely fascinating to me, and it's one of those things that is just literally stunning. The very first time I read this, I was like, say what? Surely you can't be serious. The very first time I read it was in Greg Beale, in his New Testament theology, I believe it was. He said the Great Tribulation has been going on since the first century. Just recently, Sam Frost, former preterist, took the identical position. And I'm like, how can anyone read the text of Matthew chapter 24 and get that out of it? Well, they get that out of it not by exegesis, but by reading into it, and by imposing on it the idea that Matthew chapter 24, 29 and following is predicting some kind of end of time annihilation of the physical cosmos. Well, that didn't happen in the first century. Therefore, we must be still living in the time of the Great Tribulation. Well, it raises the question, what was the abomination of desolation? When did it occur? Are we supposed to believe that the abomination of desolation happened 2,000 years ago, but that the Great Tribulation has been going on as a direct result of that ever since? Now, if that's the case, remember, the abomination of desolation would bring about the Great Tribulation not on the world. Do you catch the power of this? Not on the world. Not on the church, but on Israel. After all, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then get out of town. Leave Judea. So, where's the abomination? In Judea. Where's the tribulation? In Judea. Now, that doesn't mean it wouldn't have impact outside of that, but the focal point is Judea. It's Israel. To suggest that we today in America are experiencing the Great Tribulation, a tribulation such as has never been since the foundation of the world or ever yet shall be, is, I want to be as kind as possible here, but this is utterly ridiculous. This is ludicrous. By the way, did you know that actual studies have shown there is less violence in the world today than there ever has been? I know that people like to say, very often do say, oh, we're just living in the worst times the world's ever seen. Well, in the first place, that's absolutely historically false. If you believe that, with all kindness and with all respect, I would suggest you do some study of history. And you'll find that is absolutely false. Now, to shift gears here, let's look at the context and the framework of the abomination. The abomination of desolation is taken from Daniel chapter 9. 70 weeks, Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon your people and your holy city. 6 constituent elements are determined there, all of which were to be accomplished within the 70-week period. Among those, by the way, would be the filling up of the measure of sin, to finish transgression, which means to fill up the measure of sin. Well, guess what, folks? It wasn't done at the cross, and it wasn't done at the stoning of Stephen. Paul, writing years after the stoning of Stephen, after the conversion of the Gentiles, said the Jews were even then still filling up the measure of their sin. That means that the 70 weeks had not been fulfilled. I discuss all of that and more in my book, The Resurrection of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 2. Now, Daniel chapter 9 gives us the countdown of the 70 weeks. In verse 26, after the 62 weeks, which is technically after the 69 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. That means the Messiah would be cut off within the 70th week. If it's after the 69th, guess where that puts it? In the 70th week. But not for himself, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it, of what? The city and the sanctuary. Well, what does the 70 weeks entail? The city and the people. So after the 69th week, Messiah will be cut off, and the people of the prince will come and destroy the city, and the fate of the city belongs to the 70 weeks. But watch this. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of the abomination shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. Well, what's the consummation? The end of the 70 weeks. And what's he talking about? On the wing of the abomination of desolation. So, whatever the abomination of desolation was, it belongs within the 70 weeks of Daniel. And notice what he does. He gives us the countdown of the 69. He gives us what happens after the 69. That's the death of the Messiah and the destruction of the city. Remember, Daniel 9:24, 70 weeks are determined on your people and on your city. And then he says the abomination of desolation would be set up even until the consummation. Folks, what's the consummation? The 70th week. The end of the 70th week. You can't leave the consummation out. Verse 25 and 26 gives us the beginning from the going forth of the decree. There's the beginning. Then the consummation. When's the consummation? The destruction of the city at the time of the abomination of desolation. You can't get the abomination of desolation outside of the 70th week. If you can, where's the evidence of it? After all, the abomination of desolation belongs to the time of the judgment on Jerusalem. The judgment on Jerusalem is part of the 70-week countdown. 70 weeks are determined on your people and on your city. It does not say, it does not hint, and it does not suggest Well, the 70 weeks will be completed, but within the 70 weeks, the fate of the city will be determined, and then the city will actually fall. No, it doesn't say that, and it doesn't suggest that. The language does not say that. It does not say 70 weeks are determined to determine the fate of the city. It says 70 weeks are determined on the city. And the consummation, once again, let me reiterate this. We get the beginning of the 70th week from the going forth of the decree. There's the beginning. And then it looks to the consummation. How can we put the consummation at the time of the destruction of the city associated with the abomination of desolation, and yet say that consummation is actually outside the 70 weeks? It just doesn't work. And again, I cover all of this and more in my book, The Resurrection of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 2, Fulfilled or Future. Special for this month, September 2019. It does not apply to overseas orders, I'm sorry. But total delivered price, $19.95 to your door. That will save you $8.50, almost $9, okay? So go to my website. There's a banner right up at the top. All you got to do is click it and follow. $19.95. You will be amazed at the simplicity of Daniel 9 and the countdown and the abomination of desolation. And here's the reality. It has to do with the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. You know what? Those who try to put the fulfillment of Daniel 9 at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, as Brent Petrie notes very succinctly, those who make that application overlook the fact that the city and the sanctuary were not destroyed by Antiochus Epiphanes, but that is explicitly demanded by the text of Daniel chapter 9. No, this looks beyond the time of Antiochus Epiphanes to the time of Jesus. That's where Jesus put it, because he told his apostles they would see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. And of course, we've got more. Now, in the meantime, don't forget, tomorrow we'll continue our refutation of Sam Frost's book, The Parousia of the Son of Man. And we're going to be seeing what he has to say about 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And you will be, I suggest that you're going to be as flabbergasted as I was when I read what he has to say the very first time. And my amazement has grown ever since then at how anyone could actually make such an unprecedented and incredibly bad argument. You don't want to miss that. So I'll see you on the flip side.